Ladies and gentlemen, the Cowboys got him. Christian Parker is the new defensive coordinator. We'll dive into that hire next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we are discussing the new defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll talk about why they decided on Christian Parker and not Jim Leonhard. We'll talk about how this could impact the way the Cowboys handle free agency and the draft. But Landon, Christian Parker is the new defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, the former Eagles passing game coordinator. He's also the secondary coach. I know you were a big fan of him before the Cowboys even made this announcement. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys kind of went into this process talking about wanting to get someone who was a communicator, someone that was detail oriented. They had a whole bunch of kind of superlatives that they had put out there for what they were looking for. And I think that based on everything we've heard and folks that have talked about him, Christian Parker really kind of hit all of that like right on the nose. And I think, there was obviously a lot of talk about Jim Leonhard and all that. We'll talk about that in the second segment, but I kind of think that it Parker came in with that first interview and blew them away with the kind of detailed presentation that he had, and then came in and blew them away in the second interview. And it made their decision really easy. And he just sort of really, really fit what they were looking for in their defensive coordinator.
My favorite part about the hire is that I almost will guarantee you Jerry Jones didn't know who he was like a week ago, which is awesome, right? Like this is the exact reason why we're excited about the hire, because it does feel like this is a guy that is trending upward. The Cowboys have a long history of having former head coaches as a defensive coordinator, and it wasn't working, right? Like that cycle was not working outside of Dan Quinn. And I don't think this is a team that was ever going to get over the hump by playing everything down the middle and swinging for a single, right? I think they needed to make some big changes, take some risk. And this is what we wanted to see, is a young, fresh face who had no previous ties to the Cowboys, who blew away 2 interviews, blew the front office away. This is exactly what we've been waiting for years now.
Yeah, and it feels like a real Clayton Adams hire, right? Like, again, like kind of an inside baseball situation. He's worked with a lot of the right people. I think that's the thing that, you hear about a guy that is ambitious and smart and intelligent enough to make a leap from college coordinator to key defensive coach cog in a Super Bowl winning defense in less than 10 years. And that's a trip that usually takes twice that long. Every single person that feels like that has worked with him or worked under him has or he's worked for has seemingly spoke incredibly about him.
The only knock, honestly, I've read everything. I've talked to several different people. The only knock I have on Christian Parker that like comes up at all is he's just never called plays before. That's it.
Just hasn't done it yet.
Right. Now, there could be some, lumps that you have to take as he kind of figures things out and adjusts to making big time calls at the end of these games. But everything else is like an A+.
Well, and that's the thing, right? And look, we don't want to look past that, because this is something that we've talked about as, a potential issue in the past. And we don't want to pretend like we're just looking past it.
No, we're not
an issue
that at all. Yeah.
But I think that the fact is that every other thing that you hear about this guy lines up, and none of these candidates are perfect, right? So if the one downside to this guy is that he hasn't had the opportunity to do something yet, I think that's something that specifically it feels like that combined with what seemingly this guy is about. Like, I mean, you keep reading about the copious notes he takes, the elite communicator, hyper organized was a phrase that I've heard someone mention about him. And
another one, I know he worked a lot like in the video departments for several
QC
teams. Like
for the Packers,
one of the jobs earlier in his career was like to gather clips that he would send to Vic Fangio. Like, hey, here's every red zone snap from week 14. Let's watch them all together. And I know that doesn't have a ton to do with coaching, but I think he's going to be, at least the hope is that he's very good situationally because he watches so much tape.
Yeah.
He knows what he's looking for. That's encouraging.
Jerry Alexander called him a football nerd. And so that's the kind of guy that you want jumping. I mean, think about Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson's a football nerd. Like, that's the kind of guy you want hopping into these roles. Maybe they don't maybe have it all figured out right away, but they're also not going to have to be the people that have to learn other people's lessons, right? Like they'll learn from other people's mistakes, and then they'll make mistakes, and then they'll learn from their own mistakes. I just think we should talk real quick, before we get out of the segment, about what kind of coach he is too. Like what some of the scheme stuff. So like, obviously he comes from Vic Fangio. I mean, he was with Fangio in Denver for the 2 years in 21. I think it was 21 to 22.
Correct.
And then Fangio goes to Miami to be the head coach in 23. And then in 24, he goes to the Eagles, and he's been there since then. In 21 and 22, and in 24 and 25, those were Fangio's 4 best years, like as a defensive coordinator, right? Period. In the year between when he didn't have Parker in Miami, it was an absolute disaster. Now, listen, part of that is like, situationally and him being a head coach and all that. But if you listen to what Fangio struggled with as a head coach, right? It was about the communication aspect. It was about identifying with younger players, getting the concepts taught to them. And that specifically is the kind of thing where Parker has been a specialist for Fangio. That's why he brought him in to Philadelphia after he left Miami to go be the defensive coordinator for the Eagles.
Yeah. So actually, just to correct you real quick, he was actually the defensive coordinator in Miami.
I'm sorry.
Was the head coach. No, you're good. But you're right. I think a lot of this, there was a lot of tension between Fangio and some of the younger players, and actually not even some of the younger ones. Like Jalen Ramsey was pretty vocal about how he did not get along with with Vic Fangio. I think Parker was a good bridge between the two, but I also say we can look at like different coverages and schemes and all that kind of stuff. I think it would be a mistake to assume that Parker is going to be a carbon copy of Vic Fangio and run exactly what he does. He's his own man. He's right. He's coached under several different styles of coaches. I've got to believe he's going to be somewhat of a hybrid. And he's also talked about how he adapts his scheme based on the player. And that is so encouraging to hear. We'll see if he follows through with that, because I know that's sometimes great in coach speak and just talking. But if you actually have a defensive coordinator that's going to adjust your scheme and your coverages based on the talent that you have, sign me up.
Yeah, and look, to your point, I mean, obviously, Vic Fangio, Vance Joseph, he was under Patini, he was under Mike Elko for a couple of years when Elko went from Notre Dame to Texas A&M. So, he's worked under a lot of different guys. So it is going to be kind of a learning experience to see exactly what sort of form of defense comes out of this whole situation.
Last thing before we move on here, you and I really were hoping that the Cowboys would hire somebody that had a background in the secondary, in coverage, right? Because we felt like it's a lot easier just to get a bunch of dudes up front to rush the passer. It's a lot harder to get the coverage part of this to work. And I think that's why I'm encouraged by this, because this is somebody who was a former secondary coach, was a defensive backs coach. This is the type of hire we've been wanting to see for a long time now. Again, he's going to be pretty raw. It might take some time. It might take a year, but the reviews from everybody you talk to are outstanding. They all believe this is a future head coach. Now that comes with its own set of challenges, Landon. Yeah. We talked about how that could be an issue, but if Christian Parker ends up becoming a head coach, it means things went pretty well here in Dallas.
Yeah. And I think that's that's the downside that, we talked about previously. You do get some compensation if that is the case. But yeah, I mean, the hope is that he is able to kind of get in here and have, an immediate impact, as much as you can hope for. And if it ends up that he is so good that he gets pulled away, hopefully that means the Cowboys had a ton of success at least next season.
Last thing, go on Twitter or Reddit or wherever you find football fans and see what the Eagle fans are saying about Parker. Like, they're so bummed that he's going to the Cowboys. A lot of them are still really rooting for him because they like him so much. They're just bummed that it's the Cowboys. I think that's the sign that the Cowboys might have stole Parker here. All right, let's talk about why they made the decision now to hire Christian Parker and not wait for after the AFC Championship game when they could have met with Jim Leonhard. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without all of the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to fill out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. It's a huge time saver and gives you real peace of mind knowing that an expert is handling it all. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, all you have to do is file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, check out the new Everydayer Club. You're going to get access to ad-free audio of the Locked On Cowboys podcast, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Just go to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Landon, I know there were a lot of Cowboy fans that wanted Jim Leonhard. I'm sure there's some that still do. Why make the decision to hire Parker now when the Broncos and Patriots play in just a couple days and you could have interviewed Leonhard then?
I think that, there's a lot, and this is something that I actually brought up on the squad show a little bit. I think that there's a lot of inside baseball that's happening that we're not privy to. I mean, obviously there is a lot of that, but I think there is a lot of that goes on in the coaching carousel specifically, because all these agents talk, because ownership talks to these agents. There's obviously a lot of negotiating that gets done to the media, and we see a lot of that. But I also think that there is, a lot of box checking that goes on in conversation between front offices and the agents that's not being done in the media. So, and I'm wondering if the Jim Leonhard situation isn't simply this. Jim Leonhard thinks that Vance Joseph is going to get a head coaching job after they're done whatever they're doing in the playoffs, and that if he does, he's getting the defensive coordinator job at Denver, which is what he's ultimately looking for. And if that's the case, then or if you feel like there's more competition there than you want to be a part of, and you feel very, very good about Parker, you may just go, you know what? Let's get this locked in. We get ready for Senior Bowl. We get ready for Shrine Bowl. We get Parker in with our scouts a little bit earlier. It helps us get a jump on getting ready for the season. I think there is a concern at a certain point that if you're going to be installing a new defense, as the weeks go on, you're losing some key time in this whole situation. And not that that's the deciding factor, but maybe it is breaking the tie between these two candidates that you really, really like.
I think one of two things could have happened. And the first one is, I think, honestly, the most likely one is that they got Christian Parker in for an interview on Wednesday and they were just blown away. They probably really liked Jim Leonhard. Honestly, I think he's probably a guy that they felt great about. But once they got him in once they got Parker in for the in-person interview, it was just made up. Like they knew which direction they were going. And honestly, that's the best case. Like that's the thing. We love Parker so much. We don't care about any other candidate. This is our top guy. I honestly think that's what happened. But I also think the other part could be true, which you mentioned, that Leonhard might be holding out for that Broncos job. The other part of this is as these other head coach openings are starting to be filled, you're also getting more defensive coordinator openings. Like I'll give you an example. The Chargers just lost their defensive coordinator in Jesse Minter. That job is now open. The 49ers have lost their defensive coordinator in Robert Saleh. That job is open. And there's a chance, this podcast is going to be aired on the 23rd. There's a chance that some of these teams aren't filling their defensive coordinator jobs until we get into February. And I got to assume, because Leonhard, I don't believe, has done any in-person interviews yet, you're going to have teams like the Ravens, the Giants, the Packers, the 49ers, the Chargers, who all want to interview him in person. And one more other scheduling thing. Like there's a huge winter storm coming for the entire country here on Sunday, right? Which could delay some of these in-person interviews. What if Jim Leonhard doesn't wrap up his interviews until, late January, and he doesn't decide until February? The ultimate goal is to get it right. But there is a scheduling part of this of like, hey, we've got all-star games. We've got the combine coming up. We've got free agency coming up. It's going to take 2 or 3 weeks to assemble a staff. It's just not worth waiting around here.
Yeah, and getting it right includes, getting pre-draft evaluations of college players right as well. So there is
getting your staff. Like that's the other part is I think for Christian Parker, because he's a first-year play caller, it's going to be vital that he gets the right staff in there. And the same for Jim Leonhard, who's never called plays in an NFL level as well.
And again, like think about how we felt about the opposite effect of not getting the jump on this and being late to the game in a lot of this stuff last year. It really did kind of handcuff the Cowboys and what they were able to get, especially seemingly on the defensive side. So I do think that it's going to help the Cowboys kind of jump the gun on being able to get some of the guys that they want. Because you're right. Like assembling a staff is difficult enough, but doing it while competing with potentially 5 or 6 other entities, that would make it even more difficult. And now you get you're picking the litter if you're one of only 2 or 3 defensive coordinators that are looking to hire, positional coaches.
Watch from this Friday to next Friday how many jobs are filled in terms of like defensive line coaches, linebacker coaches around the league. Like you're going to see a ton of movement. If you have to wait a week or 2 weeks on Leonhard, he might be the better candidate. Let's say he is, but if he doesn't have a better staff around him, how much of a difference does that make? We both really like Jim Leonhard, but I think you and I are both very thrilled that Christian Parker is here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, we're going to see exactly how he is as a play caller. There is certainly some unknown here, but I think the fact is that everything else about him is exciting. And add in the fact that it's the process, right? Mm-hmm. Like I just love the way this process went. They cast a very wide net. They did it quickly. They were decisive. They made a decision seemingly based on an interview which they got blown away
on merit. To me, right?
To me, that's all very good process. It wasn't just because Jerry knows this guy's name and so we're hiring him. I think this was the right way to do this. And
I thought Jonathan Gannon could have been an option here because of, his relationship with Clayton Adams, who he hired in Arizona.
Sure.
Why don't you think that worked out? Because I know that it sounded like for a while he was at the top of the list. Do you think that it was just simply Parker was a much better candidate?
I mean, both of them got opportunities to get into that room, and one of them they wouldn't let leave without making him the defensive coordinator. I have to imagine.
I think you can read between the lines there, right?
I think that's probably what that's all we need to say, right? Is that I think it's a pretty production related industry, and I think one performed well probably, and one performed not as well, and one got the job, and one is still looking for a job.
Landon is saying a lot there without saying a lot. Just we'll say that. All right, let's talk about how the Cowboys are going to change their defense now with Christian Parker. What can we expect in free agency? What can we expect in the draft? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season is in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium just hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices jump right at checkout. But that's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack of unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. Like, my favorite part of the app is that you can get the exact view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you're not surprised when you get to the stadium. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code Locked On NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you're going to see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you could apply to the best that you like the most. Like, I love Seattle and New England to both win this weekend. You can bet on that Super Bowl matchup. Go apply your profit boost to get an even bigger payout for that bet, or whatever bet you want to make this weekend. Visit FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Landon, how does the hiring of Christian Parker as the new defensive coordinator change how they might approach free agency in the draft?
Well, that's what's going to be an interesting question, right? And because, as we discussed, we don't necessarily know for certain that Parker is going to necessarily transcribe the Fangio defense over to what we've seen. But I think we can probably infer that is going to definitely be Fangio influenced. I mean, he was very involved in the kind of updating of the Fangio defense to kind of match sort of the kind of quarters looks that Brandon Staley had updated the year previous to that. So I imagine that if that's the case, then he has shown an ability to work with a wide variety of defensive backs who can play in that scheme. I mean, I think clearly you look at the guys that he's worked with previously. I mean, he was instrumental in getting Surtain up to where he is in the pros. He worked obviously with the two young guys in Philadelphia. So I think he's shown, and then he's also shown that he can work with guys like Darius Slay and he had Jair Alexander as a young player and then later as an older player too. So I think that we shouldn't necessarily infer a lot of changes to what they're looking for, in their kind of templates for defensive backs or for defensive linemen. I think what may be interesting is trying to have a discussion about the kind of fronts that they're going to be using, right? And because I think in Philadelphia with Fangio, it's been kind of, a lot of mix and match. I mean, we don't necessarily need to have a 4-3 versus 3-4 argument because I feel like that's a very outdated concept. But I think the question becomes, like, if you're going to be doing some more of the kind of Saban-esque mint tight fronts that have 3 down linemen, does that change the kind of body types that you're looking for in some of the outsider pass rushers? Can you be more acceptable of a Nick Herbig? Get John Owning's mouth watering here.
I was going to say like a Cassius Howe from Texas A&M, who's a undersized pass rusher who I compare to Nick Herbig. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of that. Yep.
Yeah, and I think you already got one of those guys a little bit, Nezaraku, right? Who, according to the Frisco Police Department, I think was 226 pounds or
Although I've
whatever.
learned that that's just based on when you got your driver's license, and they don't actually weigh you in prison. I did not know this. I've never been.
That's fair. That's fair. So, okay, good. Yeah, I do think that, we even saying that, I think we could say Ezraku is on the undersized
Yes.
part of the spectrum of defensive ends. So, I do wonder. That's really where I think we still have a little bit more to learn. Is how faithful will Parker be to what Fangio was doing up front, and how does that kind of extrapolate out of what the Cowboys are looking for? Because like to your point, if the Cowboys are now kind of more in the market for, even if they're broadening their defensive back template a little bit, or if they're looking for more of the kind of, or if they're at least allowing for more of the undersized defensive end, man, that really opens a lot of things up for like what's on the menu, right? And what's available, especially in the draft. The number of 6'2", 250-pound pass rushers in the middle to late first round is, I mean, it's like 7. So it's the market's really wide open in that specific area if the Cowboys can shop there.
Here's my prediction. You're going to see the Cowboys draft multiple cornerbacks, and I would assume one of them is going to be a first-round corner. I think you're going to see a first-round edge rusher with some juice, some guys that can get upfield. Look at what Philadelphia has done the last couple of years between like Nolan Smith. They traded for Jalen Phillips. I don't think you're going to see any of these like big body run-stopping defensive ends, and I wouldn't be surprised if in free agency you go after linebackers and safeties, veteran linebackers and safeties, maybe like a Nakobe Dean or maybe a Reed Blankenship, who's a free agent, guys that can just give you adequate play as you're kind of transitioning the defense. But I think you're going to see a heavy emphasis on edge rusher, corner in the first round, which we've already been expecting that.
Yeah. And again, like I think the question becomes, does the template get moved a little bit? And if it does, that's going to be interesting because the cornerback class is pretty, small in guys that are traditional Cowboys quarterbacks. If they can, be a little bit more adjustable in arm length and height, it really opens things up for like Mansour Delaney and all these guys. So
they're already going outside their comfort zone. They've done it now in back-to-back years with Clayton Adams and Christian Parker. Maybe we'll see that play out in the draft as well. That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free plus members-only Discord access and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. Enjoy the championship games, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.